Okay, welcome back to Conker Rants. For this one, I want to talk about 10 games that I would consider to be a little bit underrated for Sega Genesis. I guess some of them are still talked about. They end up on collections, but they don't really necessarily end up in a lot of people's lists of games. So we're just going to talk about them. So let's get right into it. First game I want to talk about is not necessarily super underrated, as it is on some Genesis collections and stuff. But out of all the games that are made by this developer, I feel like it's quite underrated, which is Dynamite Headdy. I love this game, honestly. Like, I love Gunstar Heroes and any of their other games from Treasure, but like, this game here is just a great platformer with cool characters, really weird designs for bosses and stuff. But yeah, an overall really great game. And if you like Treasure games or Konami games from that era, you'd definitely be into this game. It's definitely worth playing. I think it's on the Sega Genesis Mini. It's probably on some other Genesis collections, I'm sure, so you can play it that way. As original copies do get kind of pricey a little bit now. But yeah, number 10, Dynamite Headdy. Okay, so number 9 on the list is a game I don't really see talked about a lot, but is a really good point-and-click game, which is Scooby-Doo Mystery for Sega Genesis as well, obviously. It's a Sunsoft game. Very good point-and-click. It's got 2 separate stories that you can play through. One is at like a carnival, and one is at like a cabin. But they're really fun to play through, and pretty intuitive. The animation is amazing. Like, all the voices that they actually do have in the game are really good sounding, I feel, for the time. And if you have a chance to play this, I definitely recommend it, although the game does get quite expensive nowadays. But yeah, check it out if you can. So number 8 is a game that I feel like is a Genesis classic that never ends up on any collections, or like that I know of anyways. But that's Garfield Caught in the Act. Really, really good Genesis game. Amazing animations. Like, they're just straight out of like a Garfield cartoon. Like, they're so good. The gameplay is super fun. It's challenging but not difficult. And it's not even that expensive to get. So like, if you can get your hands on this and play it somehow, like, definitely play it. It's really good. And yeah, that's my number 8. Number 7 is actually a sprite scaler racing game. I think when people talk about games on Genesis with sprite scaling, they're always, Genesis does a terrible job at doing sprite scaling, and you need to get like a Sega CD or a 32X can do it a lot better. And while that is true, I feel like this game does it really good justice compared to something like Thunderblade or whatever, because like, this game is really good at doing it on Genesis, and it is Outrun 2019. There are other Outrun games for Genesis, but I feel like this one does the sprite scaling the best out of all of them. It's obviously a futuristic version of Outrun, but it's a very good game and a good racing game. It's really fun to go through. It's not long. If you just want to chill, play a little racing game, really good one. I highly recommend Outrun 2019. The next game on the list is one I don't see talked about really at all, in all honesty, which is Battletech. It's an isometric mech shooter game. I'd say it's kind of really similar to like Urban Strike and Jungle Strike, those kinds of games, like very similar gameplay. Very good game. You can play it multiplayer with a friend, and it's highly underrated. Like, this is another one that I feel like nobody ever talks about, and it should be talked about more because it's actually really good. So the next one on the list is one that does get a little bit pricey as well, but I would definitely highly recommend it. It's not on a lot of collections. I think the only collection it's ended up on is like a PSP collection of EA games. And this one I want to talk about is Haunting, starring Poltergeist. This game is so criminally underrated, I would say, in terms of its concept. It's such a good game, and I feel like it flew under the radar then, and it still does to this day. So the whole premise of the game is that there's a house with a family that's moved in, and you, as Poltergeist, a ghost, have to possess different objects around the house using like your slime, and scare the family away, essentially, in multiple different levels when they keep moving to different houses, and you have to keep scaring them out of these houses. You're basically terrorizing a family. Very underrated game, very fun game to play. Highly recommend it. Number 4 on the list, we got Subterranea. This game is, I don't know if it's really underrated, because I know people do like this game, but I feel like it doesn't end up in any collections, and it's not on a lot of lists. But it is really underrated, in my opinion. Graphically, this game is amazing. The soundtrack in this game is so good. Everything in it. It's just such a jam of a game. Like, it's so good. And then the whole point of the game basically is you're flying around in this ship underground. And the controls, although are a little bit weird to get used to, once you do get used to them, it's quite the fun game. And you basically just fly around the screen, fight bosses, and you like land and pick up people and bring them back to certain points. It's kind of like, I guess you could say it's kind of like Lunar Lander in that way, like in terms of like you got your boosters and you go different directions and you have to land very carefully or you'll like can take a lot of damage. But yeah, it's a very good game. Highly recommend it. Okay, at number 3 on my underrated list is Ranger X for Sega Genesis. Extremely good side scroller, action side scroller, I guess. You go around in this like mech suit, and you even have like a separate button that can separate your mech suit to like a motorcycle thing, so you can have 2 different things at one time shooting. It's really hard to explain, but like it's a really good game, and I feel like more people should check it out. I don't think this game is overly expensive. I feel like it is up there a little bit, but it's not that bad. It never ends up on any collections, and that blows my mind because it's such a good game. It is a little bit difficult. I guess some people would find it difficult, but yeah, check out Ranger X. Definitely a good game. At number 2 on my list, I have Valis, The Legend of the Phantasm Soldier. Underrated side-scrolling platformer. I wouldn't say it's like a crazy good one. It's not like, you know, an amazing masterpiece. That's not what this list is. I'm not necessarily saying any of these games are better than any of the other games on the list. I'm just saying that in terms of their underratedness, I feel like this one definitely is up there. I have this version, which is a Retrobit re-release collection. That came with the first 3 games. But this game here, specifically out of the 3 I played, I would consider to be my favorite. Definitely worth playing. Definitely Sailor Moon vibes, you know, like teenage girl that turns into a superhero and has to fight monsters. Like, it's a basic plot, but it's a really good game. It's genuinely fun to play through. And yeah, if you can get your hands on this in some form or another, definitely worth playing. Number 1 on my underrated list is a game I feel like barely anybody talks about, but if you go and look it up and you look at a comment section of this game, you'll see lots of people that enjoy it. But for some reason, I never see it on lists, and it's never in any collections, even though I think it's a Sega-developed game, right? Yeah, I think it actually is a Sega Technical Institute that did develop this game. I could be wrong, but I think so. Anyways, number 1 on the list is Dick Tracy. This game is genuinely so fun, and it is the second Sega Genesis game I've ever owned when I was a kid. I think I told this story before, but I got Back to the Future 3 as a game first, and it was so bad that I went back to the game store and traded it in for this game. And best decision I ever made at that point, because this game is actually so genuinely good. It's... how do I explain this game? It's a side-scroller, as in you shoot people that are on the same side of the road as you, but then there are also enemies on the opposite side of the road that you have to use like the B button or your next button over to attack the people on the opposite side of the road with your machine gun, and use your handgun on this side of the road. So there's a lot of things to keep track of when you're doing it. It's not just a straight side-scroller. There's a lot of things in the background you have to keep your eye on. A lot of the bosses are kind of creative and fun to play. The sprite work and everything in this game is fantastic. It's like, obviously it came out around the same time as the movie, so it's inspired by that. But like everything looks great in this. It's got a great comic book look. Highly underrated Sega Genesis game. It never makes it on any lists. It never makes it into any collections. And I feel like more people should play this game because it's actually so good. Okay, so that's my list of underrated games. I might do another one of these if you guys like it. Please let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate any feedback on this stuff. Or if you want me to do maybe an underrated list for another console. But keep in mind, I'm doing this according to games that I actually own. If I don't own them, I'm not going to do, like, you know, a list of it. So, yeah. So if you liked the video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one.